Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our keynote speakers, expert moderators, panelists, and solutions sponsors for participating in this year's Insight Jam Live. This has been a big year with the launch of the InsightJam.com community site and the amazing growth of the Insight Jam YouTube channel, which now has over 500,000 subscribers. Much of this success is tied directly to the video events, podcasts, and panel discussions we have been producing, and none of that would be possible without the thoughtful participation of the many IT professionals who are generously sharing their expert insights for this latest jam. We are building Insight Jam to be a place to celebrate enterprise technology with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy this event.
Solutions Review presents the Insight Jam Expert Keynote.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Samir Sharma, and I'm the CEO and founder of DataZoom. I've worked in the data industry now for over 20 years. Gosh, that's a long time. I feel ancient myself. And today I'm going to be talking about data and AI strategy in the real world, from chaos to clarity. So let's just start very quickly about DataZoom. So who are we? We are a data strategy and analytics company. We work across the US, UK, Europe, and Middle East. We're 20 in the UK, but we've got an extensive associate network. And what are our specializations? Well, data is obviously one of those specialist subjects that we love to talk about, love to work with companies about, AI as well. But we are primarily a business outcomes focused organization. So we always focus on the business first. And most of the team have got over 20 years of average experience. And we are a very experienced team in that sense. We do four things: data and AI strategy, data and AI governance, data and AI operating models, and data and AI implementation. So why am I here today talking to you about data and AI strategy? And what is the reality that we're living in right now? Well, I recently read the Cisco 2024 AI Readiness Index report. There was some fascinating content, and I urge you to also read it. I can't give you the full skinny of it because I think that would just take too long. But as you can see, they surveyed about 8,000 senior execs. The two things that I really found were fascinating for me were that out of those 8,000, 13% of those companies emerged as pace setters. So what does that mean? They're fully prepared to leverage AI's potential. That means they've got the right teams, they've got the right culture, they've got the right infrastructure, they've got the right strategy in place. That's only 13%. And then on the flip side, 85% of leaders believed that they had less than 18 months to implement an effective AI strategy. So they were also coming from a sort of, a laggard. These were laggards, people who were slipping behind in their quest to become more AI focused as organizations. So, AI is on everybody's lips today, from conference stages to office corridors to political campaigns. Honestly, there's no denying it. AI is the obsession of the world right now, and specifically two things: generative AI, which, general artificial intelligence, and agentic AI. We all know about ChatGPT. I don't think I need to go into that too much, but these are the two prevalent areas that most organizations are looking at. But, I don't want to be the doom monger here. Most of the new tools and technologies that come around, there's always a hype cycle, and there's the trends that typically, we come to a point where between about 65 to 80% of these programs or projects will fail. And why is that? Because most people just throw money at it. They hire a few specialists and whoa, poof, with magic dust, they sprinkle and they think that things are just going to get done. But, the reality is you just can't throw money at a situation like this. You've got to have a clear strategy. You've got to have that strategy tied to measurable business outcomes, you've got to think about the risks of just becoming, of these AI investments becoming expensive experiments. So, many leaders may understand what AI can do, but where they fall down is when it comes to defining the why and the how. And that's where the game is won or lost. And it's not really in the technology itself, but it's in the execution of that technology. But let's just roll back a little bit. Where have most organizations come from and where are they now? Statistica did a recent survey and found that about the average company has about 371 SaaS applications. Whoa, that's crazy. So you can imagine, just looking at this particular picture and thinking about, all of the layering on one on top of another of technology, of new applications. Year in, year out, we've got to buy new tech. Data silos being created. Organizational boundaries are in constant fluctuation from decentralized to centralized and back again. And huge bottlenecks in data being available at the right time to the right people. So you can see in the picture, that is typically, there's one guy, who knows exactly how to maintain that specific application. And if they leave, that house of cards just falls down. And obviously our biggest friend here, or enemy, is Excel. Now, there's no denying it. No one's going to get rid of Excel, but we can improve that. I know one company that we work with has a 25 gigabyte Excel spreadsheet that they're currently using to run one of their lines of business. Now, the hand cranking on that is crazy. It's just not that. It gets corrupted. It takes a long time to actually start up. One of the people was telling me they would, to start it up, they'd normally go away, get a coffee and come back. And by the time they've done that, it's up and running. But, that's crazy. You don't want to be in that situation. But when we go into organizations, what do we see? Typically, this is where, when I ask the question, do you have a data strategy? I see a picture like this. A series of diagrams that are technically motivated, and no one from the business functions really understands what's happening. And therefore, it becomes another major technical program of delivering, maybe a modern data stack or some other large transformation program, which runs off into the distance and becomes, again, another experiment. And it's not aligned to the business needs, which then becomes a sunk cost and inevitably create data and tech debt. And, no doubt in the future, we will have major AI debt. So moving away from something like this is where organizations want to get to. But there are things that are missing in organizations today. And what are those things that are missing? Well, most data strategies that I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years have had, as I said, major technological reflections written in those data strategies, very long, laborious documents, lots of big PowerPoint slides talking about, we need to build platforms and we need to build models and so on and so forth. But the two things that are missing, and this was actually ratified by Gartner in 24, I think it was David Pidsley who did the study behind this, that only 6% of data strategies currently are real, true strategies. And the two components that are missing is the operating model, which I often refer to as the area that makes your strategy real, and the lack of business motivation, which is there's no clear purpose or goals. And that is the direct reflection of it being disconnected to the business strategy. So those two lenses are pretty major. Not having a connection to the business strategy and not having a way to make your strategy real, those are two massive components around how organizations are currently working and where the deficiencies lie. So what's the way forward? How do we improve this? How do we make sure that we can absolutely put in a framework, an approach that helps organizations today, tomorrow, and hopefully for the future, build out their runway, a really decent vision, and an approach that will help them succeed for the future? So at DataZoom, we use a data and AI strategy framework, which, like the light bulb, it hopefully puts a shining light on what we need to do. But at the top end of the bulb, we focus on two areas, and that's the vision. Where do you want to go as an organization, and what do you fundamentally want to become? Is that a data organization, as many organizations talk about it now? Is it a customer-focused organization? Is it a product organization? Where are you heading? And therefore, within that context, how are we going to use data to help you to improve your business, build new revenue streams, understand where those business models can be improved? And that's really building that vision out. The second thing there is the business use case integration. So one of the elements that we really, really believe in are value-driven use cases. And these help organizations to really quantify the impact of the use cases that we will uncover. And those use cases are always, again, pinned back to the strategic objectives and goals of the organization. So whether that's, we want to increase revenue by X% by a certain date, or whether we want to improve customer experience by a certain percentage, again, by a certain date, or do we want to decrease churn by a particular percentage in our organization by a particular date? So there's lots of different ways that we can align our value-driven use cases with the business strategy. And those two areas are probably fundamental because one, it gives us the path forward, and two, it helps us break down what we can deliver in order to get to that vision. The next layer is the portfolio and the data. And when you've got your value-driven use cases, you start to think about the actual portfolio, the prioritization. Are we going to be delivering more analytics? Are we going to be delivering AI? What are those business questions that we're really answering? And also, what kind of products will we be building? So it helps us to prioritize, again, based off the ROI, the cost benefit, what we will be delivering, what the impact will be, and really how we're going to improve the business over time. Equally, what we need to make sure is that in order for us to deliver those prioritized use cases in that portfolio, we need really good data. And we need to go and find that data, source it internally or externally, whether that's second-party data from our suppliers or our partners or distributors, or from third parties, from government data or market data, weather data in some cases. So that's really important, matching the data to that portfolio. And the next layer is, as we move forward, we know that talent is scarce. Many organizations now are finding it very difficult to build up the right talent. They're having to look internally because they can't find the right talent externally. There's a shortage, about 250,000, I believe, in the UK. There's a shortage. I'm sure it's much more in the US. And so we've got to think about what are the human skills we need. With AI comes very different comes very different types of skills we need. We need philosophy. We need arts, liberal arts kind of thinking. We need real critical thinking, and we need different people, not from a technology background, because we've got to think about the privacy and the ethics behind this. Many countries now are coming up with new privacy laws, and the ethics are very, very impactful in terms of how we're going to be building models and delivering new products, services to our customers or internally to our colleagues. And so we need to think about how we can get the right human skills in order to ensure that we are in line with the privacy laws, whether that's in the EU with the EU AI Act, or whether that's in, the US and the different states like CCPA. So we've got to really understand and be ethical. Some people are having, ethical officers now that are being hired in. And the fundamental building blocks, as I talked about earlier, one, yes, we need architecture and technology because the architecture fundamentally will help us to bring the data around to people, to disseminate that data. Some people want to call it decentralize it. But that helps us to actually mobilize what we need to do. But the other part is really important again. It's the operating model. It's the one thing that many organizations do leave out. And that's how do we make the data strategy real, or the data and AI strategy real? And that centers around the governance, the leadership, and the culture. and the ways of working, the engagement frameworks. How do people in businesses change the mindsets and behaviors? So a lot of change management here as well. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the framework. But, Samir, you'll ask, what are the outcomes? What's behind this? Typically, when we work with organizations and we follow our methodology and framework, we will come out with typical outcomes around value creation. And where we work with them to uncover, the right use cases, as I mentioned, we will always quantify those use cases. We must ensure that there is an ROI or an internal rate of return on those particular use cases. And these are fundamental investment case opportunities. We will build the investment cases, work with the teams internally to understand what we can get back in terms of cost savings or in terms of revenue opportunities. And that's really what we need to focus on. And that's why I mentioned earlier, it's always business outcome focused, and we are a business first organization. So you can see on the screen, I'm not going to go through all of those, but you can see some of the numbers working with a diverse range of clients across the globe, what we've done in terms of driving that value, uncovering where we can build out new revenue opportunities, but also equally save some of those costs. And that doesn't mean getting rid of people. It means getting people to do things that they're supposed to be doing, giving them time back to actually focus on their job, focus on the strategy, or focus on the operations. Because most of the time, a lot of the people that we work with are focusing very, very much on that manual effort to bring data from one system to another, or to try and wrangle it and try and do something with it, but they can't find it. So we help them to reduce that, but we also are looking at it from a business perspective. So we are looking at real value-driven use cases that uncover real tangible business results. And as you can see on the screen, that's what we've been doing for a long while now at DataZoom. So how do you get started? Well, I go back to basic fundamentals here. And I think it's important to ask ourselves, what kinds of problems are we solving? Why is that really important? Because, look, everybody's going to think that we can chuck AI at anything and we can solve a problem. But that's not true. Not all problems can be solved by AI. It's not necessary that we're going to build a model that will help us predict something, or we're going to put Gen AI on top of something and it will magically give us the answer. That's not true. We've really got to understand what problems are we solving and how is that going to help the business? What is it going to give the business the opportunity to do? And how is it going to help them drive their revenue streams? Or how is it going to help them to build that vision for the future? The other thing that most people don't really think about is what's holding us back, which, looking at this peeling of the onion here, one area that I often find is missed is change management or culture management. And those are really two areas that can kill major programs. And we've seen that. I've seen it. Many people out there have seen it. I've experienced it in the corporate world. I've experienced it with organizations that I've walked in to help. Lack of change management, lack of an understanding of the culture holds a lot of organizations back because they focus on the technology first, and they're not really thinking about the people, those people who are going to be able to adopt this. How are they going to work in the future? What are their new ways of working? What are those processes that we might need to completely redo, rethink, reimagine? So we've got to really understand, where do we want to, move the people in the business, because people drive what we need to do on a daily basis. So where do we need to get them? Where are they now? And that may be part of what's holding us back. It could be organizational boundaries. It could be systems. But we've got to make a clear picture and understanding of where we are within our business, and really reflect on, with past programs, past projects, past initiatives, where have things gone wrong? How can we help ourselves to make sure that we don't do it now with AI, that we don't get into the same debt cycle of AI debt that we had with data and tech debt? So we've got to move forward with that, and we've got to understand how change and culture management can help us to do that. who's accountable? We've got so many people in the mix right now. We've got the chief data officers, we've got the CIOs, we've got the CTOs, we've got the chief AI officer now, we've got the chief data and AI officer. Wow, there's so many people in the business that are fundamentally accountable for these things. So we have to really understand, who's going to be delivering the value. How can we make sure there are incentives in place to ensure that, we aren't stepping on each other's toes? We are coordinated, we are in sync, and we are moving forward to what we're going to be delivering with the business strategy. So we've got to have an accountability structure. Yes, the CEO is ultimately accountable, but there's also other people in the C-suite and minus ones who will be driving a lot of the initiatives forward. They've got to work well together. They've got to understand how that operating model works. They've got to have a clear level of governance. They've got to have an engagement framework between themselves. And that means, how do they work together? How do their business teams work together? How do we understand the requirements and needs of those people? And then how do the ways of working change over time? So we've got to understand, and that links back into what's holding us back, because that therein helps us change the operating model and it helps us give a refined view of governance. Not saying that it needs to be onerous, but we need to have a good layer that we can make decisions quick and we can really ensure that we're not being held back and really focus on the right outcomes. So, measuring success is the next factor and the layer at the outside edge of the onion. And we've peeled quite a bit here, but I think we've got to step back and think about one of the areas that I often see. Most organizations will think that they're measuring success through actually measuring things like data quality or integration. Now, those are very low-level impacts. And yes, we should be monitoring those, measuring those, and making sure we are maturing in our quality. We are better at integrating data across the business. Our technology is, the uptime is good, and we are making sure that we've got the right technology in place. But those are all enablers. What we need to do is to elevate ourselves up to a different level, and we're trying to measure the success of our initiatives. So what is the success of building a product, and how is it helping us to deliver that revenue outcome? So we're looking at different measures of success here. We're trying to understand, did the building of that product, did it help us deliver or, create a little bit more revenue in the particular areas that we might be working with? Are our people being enabled by these various data and technologies? Is the customer experience improved as we said it would, as we forecasted it might? Going back to the ROI and the principles, did we get that right? So we've really got to make sure that we are measuring the right things. Those top line revenue factors, what are we measuring there? We really need to understand that. If it's cost efficiencies, where are we getting the cost efficiencies? But it's the business impact. It's not the technology or data impact. So those are the 4 questions that I would ask. And then we have a number of areas of focus. I just go back to it again. Without a clear strategy tied to measurable business outcomes, AI investments risk becoming expensive experiments. Infrastructure without alignment to real business needs is just sunk cost. Governance without clarity creates huge bottlenecks. Talent without the right culture is wasted potential. So to help you get clarity from the 4 basic questions that I covered in the previous slide, let's cover these 6 areas of focus. Now, you can see clear lines of sight in the DNA of any organization. They should have good strategy. There should be data that enables that strategy. We should have clear, aligned, and understood governance. Infrastructure should not be spaghetti junction. I often talk about spaghetti junctionitis because most organizations have a real spaghetti junctionitis view of their infrastructure and architecture. And we have to have the right talent in place with the right culture. Now, I've created a checklist which goes through each of these 6 major components and asks specific questions around the view of your strategy right through to your culture. And that lens helps you really understand and configure what you'd like to do and achieve through your vision, through your business strategy, and help you build the right data and AI strategy. So those 6 areas with the checklist of questions is really important that you ask yourselves there. So if you'd like those, please do get in touch. I'm more than happy to send those to you. Very simple, very practical, and poignant questions that you need to ask when you get into any kind of data and AI strategy focus, or even just ask them, even if you are in it and you can't answer some of those questions, then there's gaps. So it's a good way to judge where you are right now. But equally, if you've started that journey, you can really understand, are we limiting ourselves in any way? So here's the final question that I'll leave you with. Will your organization be one of the 13% that gets it right and become a pace setter? Or will you be one of the 85% of leaders that believe they've only got less than 18 months to implement an effective data and AI strategy, or face the tangible negative consequences of your competitors getting ahead of you? And thank you for listening today. There's my email address. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to send you that checklist of questions to ensure that you get a pulse on your business. And for now, I wish you a wonderful day ahead. Thank you very much.
For video highlights, replays, and more, visit insightjam.com.